On December 7th, 1941, Japan, like its infamous Axis partners, struck first and declared war afterwards. Costly to our Navy was the loss of war vessels, airplanes, and equipment, but more costly to Japan was the effectiveness of its foul attack in immediately unifying America in its determination to fight and win the war thrust upon it, and to win the peace that will follow.
Went to boot camp San Diego. What an eye-opener. I'd never heard people from New York talk or Texas talk. What an education. We was in what they call the bullpen till you get enough guys to form a company. And you hear all these guys talking, and I'm standing around like some country whatever, my mouth hanging open. Couldn't get over all this. So eventually we got out of boot camp and got assigned to the ship. It was the USS St. Louis, a light cruiser.
I enlisted in the United States Navy in April of 1941, which was 2 months and 1 week after my 17th birthday. I had to get my family's permission to do that. Anyway, I was able to get that. I got my basic training at the Naval Training Center, Great Lakes, Illinois. From there to Detroit, Michigan, to be trained as an aviation sheet metal worker. From there to San Diego, I received orders to report to Aerial Patrol Squadron VP 23, located at the Naval Air Station, Ford Island, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. And I went, where the hell Pearl Harbor? I don't know where Pearl Harbor is. Somebody said, oh, you're going to Hawaii.
I was on a battleship in Pennsylvania in dry dock here at Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941 there. I was in my football uniform on my ship was scheduled to play USS Arizona for a fleet football championship at 1 o'clock that day.
Direct hits were scored on hangars, and these were badly shattered. Equipment and airplane supplies were reduced to smoldering ruins. First to feel the sting of Japanese steel are the USS Oklahoma and Utah, the latter a 33-year-old target ship. Accurate hits by the enemy bombers make short work of these two naval bulwarks.
We didn't leave the ship at 8 o'clock, and 5 minutes of 8, that's when the attack started there, and you didn't have time to change clothes or anything. Here you go to your battle station, and my battle station was up in the crow's nest, about 60, 70 feet up in the air. So I had a bird's eye view. I was up higher than some of the planes that were flying around there. We had a lot of concrete around us there, and so they couldn't hit us with a torpedo, but they did hit us with a 500-pound bomb. It missed me about 45 feet. If I'd have saw it, it probably had died right there. But that kind of scary to see a big hole along the side of me. That's the only damage that my ship had that particular day.
The once mighty Arizona now rests on Pearl Harbor's muddy bottom, a pitiful relic of its former self, a grim monument to the treachery of Japan. The once mighty dreadnought's armor plate is twisted and torn, but the great battleship's control tower still stands, a defiant beacon that in days to come will cast its shadow upon Nippon's very shores.
Went aboard. Then we went down below decks, and it seemed like we walked for ages before we got to where the compartment was, where I was going to be staying. That was a real education. All this, we went out to sea, we went to the Philippines and a couple other places, then came back to Pearl again, and he was there the morning when everything broke loose. But the day before was my birthday, and that was a heck of a present that this gave us. Boy. So, the ship, on that particular day, the ship was credited with 3 planes that the 5-inch 38s knocked down. We was also the first ship out of the harbor. We stayed out at sea for about 2-3 days and came back in. All you could see yet was smoke and whatnot. But we loaded up with ammunition and fuel, and we went out again down to the Marshall Islands, did some bombarding, came back, then we made a couple of trips back to the States, convoying some ships with civilians on.
Dense black smoke billowed to the sky as the massive control tower began to keel over. The Arizona's courageous crew stuck to its guns until the very end. Here was displayed heroism that will live forever in the glorious annals and traditions of the American Navy. America lost 3 destroyers. Here are seen the United States destroyers Downs and Shore as they rest on the bottom.
And I found out later there that 2 Japanese planes were scheduled to hit the USS Pennsylvania at the dock itself, but we weren't in our normal place. So the first attack, they missed us there because they didn't know that we'd moved until they got the word for on the second attack to hit us, and Cassin and Downs, the 2 destroyers in dry dock with us. So they hit us with a 500-pound bomb at the same time they hit the destroyer, the Cassin. It started rolling over on the other ship, the Downs, and because it's on fire. The only bad thing is about it, the oil came on top of the water, caught fire, so we had flames all around us there, because oil and water don't mix, and the oil that got on top of the water caught fire, and so it got pretty hot all around us. But we were very fortunate there. That's the only hit that we had there.
These pictures were made by a fearless cameraman who thought nothing of his personal safety to make possible this record for all posterity. Hickam Field, northwest of Honolulu, and the Ford Island Naval Plane Base were the first objectives of Japan's treachery. Scores of planes were bruised and...
They took me down, put me aboard the USS Lexington, an aircraft carrier for transport to Hawaii. We left San Diego on the 14th of October of 1941. We spent several days at sea. I was so excited to be on that carrier and watch those airplanes land, take off and land. I would crawl up underneath one of the gun turrets on the ship, and luckily no one saw me there and ran me off. So I got to watch that operation day in and day out all the while we were at sea. As we went on the ship, they told us that they were so crowded that we would have to bunk in what they called the windlass room. That's up in the bow of the ship where those anchor chains come up through those big old hawsers, you know. And boy, I wanted to get close to one of those hawsers to get some of that fresh sea breeze. It was real good to the nostrils of this old farm boy, you know. So I tied up my hammock right up close to one of those, and we get out at sea, and even though those holes are maybe 40 feet above the water level, when we got heading down out of sea through those breakers, that water came in through there and it ran me off. I had to move. In the middle of the night, I got up and moved as far away from those houses as I could. We arrived in Hawaii. I asked somebody there. The carrier's always tied up over on the Pearl City side of Ford Island. And I asked somebody there, where do I find B-23? He said, oh, it's over there where those hangars are. Just walk over there and somebody will show you where it is. So I threw my sea bag over my shoulder, which had all my earthly belongings in it at the time. I made it over there, and somebody said, oh, it's over there in that building, 54. So I went over there and reported, and of course, when I went up to the captain's office, E.J. Chuck Kohler, reporting for duty, sir. Oh, we're so good out to sea and all that stuff. Go to the personnel. So I got all checked in, and usually when you are the boot in a military unit, you get assigned to some of the most unpleasant work that there is to do. But since this outfit was flying the old PBY twin-engine aircraft, flying boats, they had to have temporary wheels put on them to bring them up on the beach, and then they had to be taken off again when they went out to fly. And I was assigned, one of 3 guys assigned to the wheel mounts on the port side. So that's what I did. And I couldn't wait to get information back to my family, telling them here I am in Hawaii, working with airplanes, and you'll never guess what my work uniform is. Back there on the farm, it was usually a pair of bib overalls with a generous splattering of animal droppings, if you know what I mean. Out there, my work uniform was tennis shoes and swimming trunks. Boy, I was excited about that. But anyway, I was in that beach crew right up until through December the 6th. That all changed on the morning of December the 7th. And like I say, I was assigned a security watch, so I was up there in the office trying to type a letter when that first airplane dropped his bomb and exploded, sending that stuff in the back of my head. I thought it was one of our friendly air group pilots crashed. I ran down to the lower level, went out through the narrow opening, left at the unclosed end of that big steel hangar door, the sound of another aircraft. I looked up, and though it wasn't fully daylight yet, I could make out the outline of that airplane on a steep power dive, and I'm seeing what's looking, like I said, blinking, flashing lights, hearing strange popping, buzzing, whizzing sounds all about me. That guy was trying to destroy that airplane that I was right underneath, basically the end of the wing of. So I was right in the area. I wasn't the target, but believe you me, if you are in the area, if you are struck by one of those bullets, it will do the same damn damage to you as if you were one of the targets. And I have seen what those bullets can do to the soft flesh and the brittle bone of human bodies that morning. Anyway, I just felt that I had to do something, and I looked around, and we'd been ordered into an unfilled construction ditch out in the area of the hangar. Since I'm coming in the front door of the hangar, when they're going out the back door, I'm about the last guy into that ditch. I recognized the aviation ordnanceman that was there, and I asked, "Are you the duty ordnanceman?" "Yeah." "You got a key for the ammo shack?" "Yeah." "Well, let's go get some guns and ammo and shoot these blankety blanks, you know." So I hadn't much more than hit the ditch, and I and the ordnanceman were on our way up out of the ditch. Somebody, I suppose the duty officer, calls out, "Get back in the ditch. Get back in the ditch." Hell, I don't want to be in that ditch. We're military men. We should be putting up a defense. We shouldn't be here in this. Besides, I know that this is the beginning of that war that they've been talking about and we've been preparing for. And I'm from a proud family. And I damn well know that if I'm going to lose my life in this battle or any other battle of this war, I would want my family and my country to know that I died fighting, not hiding. We continued upon that ditch, started to run for the ammo shack. Then I heard the most unexpected military command directed at myself and at that ordnanceman that I thought I would ever hear in the military, especially under those conditions. We weren't running from the action, we were running to it. But anyway, somebody, again I suppose the duty officer, calls out, "Get back in the ditch or I'll put you on report for disobeying a direct order." Hell's bells. Talk about being between a rock and a hard spot. These guys in these airplanes are machine gunning and bombing in the area, trying to do as much damage and kill as many of us as they could. And our own duty officer, cowering here in the ditch, is threatening us with military discipline for wanting to defend ourselves. I couldn't believe it. With total and complete disregard for the threat of military discipline, with total and complete disregard for the fact that aerial bombs and machine gun bullets were raining down on the hangars to where we were running. We continued to run. We made it to the ammo shack. The ordnanceman unlocked the door, let himself in. I'm right behind him. "What do you want?" "Give me a .50 caliber machine gun." Now, I'm a recent farm boy. The biggest gun I'm used to firing on a regular basis is a little shoulder-fired 22 caliber rifle. This is not a shoulder-fired gun. It's a fixed mount machine gun. Hell, man, it looked to me like a cannon without wheels, you know. But I took it as best I could, most likely cradled it in my arms, turned and started for the door. By now, I guess a few other brave souls figured they hadn't to be in that ditch either, and they'd followed us to the ammo shack. And the guy coming in the door was somewhat taller than I, huskier build. I just offloaded that machine gun to him, saying, "Here, take it to the PBY parked in front of 23's hangar. I'll get the ammo." He looked a bit surprised, but he took a turn and out the door he went. I turned around, and there again I'm so thankful and grateful for that aviation ordnance, because without his cooperation, none of this defense that we set up there on Ford Island could have or would have occurred. Anyway, when I turned around, he was just setting 2 canisters of 50 caliber ammo up on the counter. I grabbed those 2 canisters of 50 caliber ammo, turned, and out the door I went. Now, I'm not a runner or sprinter, never have been, but I guarantee you, I beat the guy with a gun to the airplane. He had a bit of a heavier load than I did. We were approaching that airplane from the port side, the southeasterly direction, basically the same direction that the attacking aircraft were approaching from. But the ladder to get into that airplane was hanging on the starboard gun blister. I ran around the backside of that airplane, set those canisters down, started up the ladder. I don't think I got more than a couple of rungs when it dawned on me, hey, am I going to, if I get inside this airplane, am I going to be strong enough to reach down and pull that big old gun up inside? I don't think so. So I jumped down off the ladder just as the guy with the gun there got there. I told him, give it to me. You got up inside. I'll hand it to you. Boy, he chopped up that ladder, jumped inside, turned around, reached down. I got the gun to him somehow, most likely muzzle first, which is the lightest end, but which is also a safety no-no. But I don't think either one of us were thinking much about safety right at that time. I shouted, put it in the port blister. That's the side they're coming from. He turned and disappeared into the fuselage of the airplane. I grabbed a canister of ammo in my right hand, guided myself up the ladder with the left hand, set it inside the airplane, backed down, got the second canister back up, set it inside, jumped inside, picked those 2 canisters up, turned, stepped across to the port gun blister just as he was swinging that mounted gun out and locking it in firing position. I set the canisters down under the gun, flipped the lid open, come up with the end of the belt, ready to load, thinking he'd have the breech open. But he was just standing there staring skyward. I looked up, and here comes another one of those airplanes. Same old blinking, flashing lights, big old bomb here in the bottom. Now I'm only hearing popping sounds, which I was later told were most likely some of those bullets passing through the fuselage of the airplane with. Big old bomb hanging there in the bottom. Man, I couldn't wait on this other guy to get his train of thoughts back together. I just reached over, slid the lock forward, threw the breech open, fed the belt into the loading ammunition into the breech, slammed the breech shut, grabbed the charging pin, pulled it back and let it go. Bam, we get around in the chamber. Shoot, I shouted, and he pulled the trigger. Now, I guess he was one of those guys that thought with a machine gun, you don't have to aim. You just point in the direction far away. Because I stood there and watched those tracer bullets fly off harmless through open, empty space, somewhere near to where that airplane had once been. I think that's when my country boy, hunter instinct, kicked into gear. I used to shoot jackrabbits on the run, Chinese ringneck pheasants on the fly. Nah, not with a shotgun, with a 22 caliber rifle. I knew that you had to aim and put that bullet where you thought the target would be when the 2 of them came together. Back there in the prairie pothole part of Minnesota, where I was raised on a farm in the 20s and in the 30s, you became a hunter and a gatherer real early in life. And you also better become a good shot, because being a good shot would oftentimes mean the difference of whether you would or would not have food on the table. I shouted, let me get the next one. He let that gun down, stepped aside. I grabbed it, brought it back up to firing position. Just as I did, here comes another one of those airplanes in a power dive. Same old blinking, flashing light. Boy, I got a bead and a lead. I continued to lead and fire all the while that airplane came down, completed its power dive, pulled out into level flight and passed just overhead. I watched those tracer bullets fly through the air, and it looked like every one of them went into that round opening on the front of that old air-cooled dive bomber, and then stitched the stitch right down the bottom of the fuselage. You know, but you're not going to be watching him to see what happens to him. He's going away. He's no longer a threat. You damn well better be looking for the next one that's coming at you if you want to survive. So that's what I was doing. I bring that gun back down. I'm looking for another one, a power dive. I don't see any power dive. Oh, there's one out over the channel, maybe 2 city blocks away, well within the range of a 50 caliber machine gun. He's not in a power dive, but a steep banking and descending left turn, as though he's lining up to make another machine gun run on our area. Because he's in that banking turn, I can see the cockpit maybe 6 or 8 feet behind the front of that airplane. I figure at that distance and at that speed, if I can get a few rounds of 50 caliber ammo, I meant to have one of those with me, but I forgot. If I can get a few of those bouncing around inside that cockpit with that pilot, you're going to give him something else to think about besides coming back and machine gunning your area a second time. I maintained that lead, squeeze the trigger. I don't think I got off more than 6, 8, maybe a dozen rounds at the most. But I saw at least 2 of those traceables seem to disappear into the fuselage of that airplane just forward of the cockpit. And when they did, that airplane did an abrupt rolling right turn and was gone from my field of fire. No more aircraft came back to bomb or strafe our end of the island that morning. I think he got on his communication equipment and said, "Don't go back there, don't go back there, those guys are spies," you know. Anyway, they left our part of the island. I stayed at that gun. I got to fire short bursts at other aircraft as they passed through my limited field of fire on the way to or from other targets, but no more head-on turkey shoots like those first ones were.
At Pearl Harbor, at Hickam Field, in the bomb-pocked streets of Honolulu, ever is written history. History with a tragic, treacherous pen. History that 130 million Americans will never forget.
Anyway, I look back on that and I'm proud of what I did there that morning, you know. Anyway, it's a long, long time ago, like, you know, to you guys it's, what, coming up 79 years. But to those of us that were there, it's just yesterday. Just yesterday.
Ten,
9,
8,
7,
6,
5,
4,
3,
2, 1.